was awesome. Very well played, everyone. Bruce Becker here at Drumeo to teach you a lesson. Thanks for coming out, buddy.
Thank you, Dave, for having me.
Yeah. Dude, anytime, man.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and if you guys don't know who Bruce is, let me tell you a little bit about Bruce. He's not only a great drummer, as you just saw there, but he's also an amazing teacher. Now, throughout your life, you've been playing and recording and for most of your life, correct?
Many years.
Many years.
Yeah, over 30.
Crazy. And you've recorded with Mike Stern, Ron Carter. You've toured the world, done a ton of jazz festivals. The coolest thing is this guy has taught people like David Garibaldi, Daniel Glass, Glen Sobel, Ralph Johnson, Mark Schulman. Those are your students.
Yeah. Especially like Daniel Glass, Mark Schulman. Garibaldi had a few lessons with me back a few years ago, which was pretty cool. Very, very honored to have him, look me up and say like, hey, man, I'd like to check you out. I'm like, oh, you're my hero, man. He's the architect of funk. So
totally.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're here at Drumeo to share some of your insight with all of our students. And you've also studied with Freddie Gruber.
Yes.
You've hung out lots with Jim Chapin. In fact, I would probably bet that you offer the most comprehensive insight on Freddie's teachings.
Yeah, I had a very, very in-depth relationship with Freddie, not only as a student, but as a good friend, a confidant, and kind of his go-to guy. And when I moved to Europe in '92, he, went over specifically to hang with me, and we did some clinics together. And I had to do a lot of wrestling with Freddie. He was a piece of work, but very grateful that I had that opportunity to hang so close with him, because after post-studying with him, I got really a chance to get in-depth and ask things. And I was a go-to guy to play for a lot of students. Like I was at a Dave Weckl lesson and a Steve Smith lesson and those kind of lessons. I didn't realize the value of what it was they were seeking, being loose and all that stuff. I didn't know that because I started as a kid. So.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm really excited about this lesson, and we're calling it the truth about hand technique, or the truth of hand technique, and obviously it's the truth according to Bruce. But you have so much experience, you've seen so much, you've taught some of the world's best, and you've been taught by the world's best. So I'm really excited to see what this lesson all entails, and you guys can download the PDF. There is a PDF with this lesson. Now, the whole meat behind this lesson is more so the teachings of Bruce, but the PDF is there to facilitate some of the motions and stuff that Bruce is going to be talking about. Right. But before we get onto that, huge thanks to DW, Peisty, Evans, and Vic Firth for helping support this lesson. You guys always do great with that. It's great to see this Jared's DW kit back in here again. Sounds awesome.
Beautiful,
And also, you have a DVD and a book out, and we're going to give 5 copies of these away with this lesson. The DVD is called Drumming with Bruce Becker, Concepts and Philosophies. Here's the cover right there. You can see it. Check it out online on his website. The book is Puzzles, Rhymes, and Riddles, Solutions to Odd Time Phrasing. Very cool book. I just opened it up and checked out some of the stuff in there. Some 6/16 and some other odd time. Really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Rhythms and riddles, puzzles. Check it out, guys. For those watching this lesson, we're going to give 5 copies away, and that's going to happen by posting a comment. Once this YouTube or video hits YouTube, we're going to give it 30 days from the release date. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment saying what your favorite part of the lesson was. Doesn't matter what it was, but just leave a comment. We'll randomly select 5 winners and ship you a copy of both Bruce's DVD and his book, which is very cool. Thank you for that.
Oh, yeah. Glad to apply.
Also, if you guys want to follow Bruce online, you can check out his website, brucebecker.com. And you can also follow him on Facebook at facebook.com/BruceBeckerDrums. And that's where you'll post all your information. And the first track you played, that is your brother, correct, David?
My brother and I have had a long-standing jazz trio starting 1982.
Okay.
And we have made a total of 10 recordings.
Wow.
A few little offshoots of production things that I've been part of with David, like the thing with Ron Carter and Mike Stern. That was a tribute record to the late, great Hungarian bass guitar player who actually lived in the States, Attila Zoller, who was a big influence on a young Pat Metheny and was sort of a very engaging dude and had a lot of reach. He played with Ron Carter and Herbie Hancock in the 70s. And so when they put this project together, I was so honored to be part of it, playing with Ron on a couple of sessions, Mike Stern, John Abercrombie, who's my guitar hero. So it was quite a cool thing. So
that's really cool. And that the song was called Freebon.
That was called Freebon. Yeah, that's from a record called Germerica. Again, playing on German in America. My brother lived in Germany for about 21, 22 years.
Yeah.
So, and that record was done quite a while ago. It was a record company or a DVD audio company called 5.1 Entertainment.
Very cool.
Yeah. So.
Check them out. David Becker Tribune is the band called, or it's the title that he goes by.
Yeah.
You can find them online there, and you're also going to be playing another song from them further out in the lesson. Lastly, guys, if you like what you're watching here and you're watching this on YouTube, or maybe you're watching it live right now with us, you should definitely check us out on Drumeo.com. We have a full member section where we do a lot more in-depth kind of lessons like this. In fact, we're filming a course on technique, hand technique and foot technique with Bruce in the next few days here. We're also going to be doing a Q&A session with him tomorrow just for Edge members. You can get a free 30-day trial at drumeo.com/trial, but come check us out if you like this, because there's a lot more of Bruce inside of Drumeo as well. That's enough of me talking. I want to get into the subject, the truth about hand technique. What is the truth, Bruce?
What is the truth? Well, you know, I was very fortunate to study with Freddie at a young age. In the early days, this was going back to the later 70s, so probably around 1977, everything that he had done at that particular point was mostly built around the German approach and, of course, traditional grip. I think it was maybe about 6 to 8 months into it that I decided that there was so much stuff going on from traditional grip that I just abandoned, and Freddie was kind of bugged. But so those were the early days. Later on in the early 80s, I was also a student at Cal State Northridge of the classical percussion department, where I was studying mallets, marimba, and timpani. And the teacher there was really into French timpanist grip. Later on, like later 80s, Freddie started to adapt French grip into his teachings as well. So I was there and I was able to watch that even though I wasn't a student, because I was pretty much a regular hang at his house. But what I want to sort of share with everybody is that between the inside, let's say that this is the inside of the arc, being the French grip approach, and all the way out to the outer edge of that arc to the German grip, that there's a lot of commonalities and simple things to really adapt to. Some of the harder things are to change your reflexes in how your hand and stick bond. And that's the difficult task. That's where I'm really a taskmaster at, is giving guys, you know, the little step-by-step procedures to feel the stick differently in the hand and to find pressure points and balance points that you may not be so aware of. So, starting point, French grip. A lot of guys will come to me and they say, I don't play French grip. And I'll say, that's okay, because whatever we do in French grip, it will affect what you do when you're playing. Meaning, what we're looking to do is retool up your relationship with the stick and feel the elasticity of the stick. So really feel that fluidity of movement. If you are playing really tense and tight, you may not have a lot of range in your playing, and it may create some problems later on down the line. Now, I have a lot of guys who are in their older, like 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they've played long enough to know that their technical facility has sort of boxed them in. And in order to push through, you have to readdress a lot of that stuff. So, French grip, here's an exercise that I start with. Now, some of the components that we really want to pay attention to are the arm position. We want to have the elbow out. If you look at my elbow to my side to my armpit, I have an isosceles triangle. The other thing is if I lay my left stick in the same position, so my hands are symmetrical, I have my sticks parallel. Now again, a lot of guys go, but I don't play that way. These exercises are just, again, they're to redesign how you are housing the stick, how you are in touch with that, and creating a better mind-body connection. So, this first exercise I'll lay out for you, so we have an actual detailed lesson, is that I'm going to press the stick from the base of my thumb and bring that stick into a position where it is now squeezed to my pinky finger. Now, a lot of guys say, why the pinky finger? Well, the pinky finger is a formidable foe in our technique. If you ever watch Tony Williams play, he plays from back here. Now, that's German, but still, we can start to recognize and build strengths and understand those pressure points and the dynamic of how those work to assist us and get more fluidity out of what we want in our playing. So, here we go. Squeeze, and then hold it there. So we want to create tension and release. If I was to sort of just simply put it, what we want to dynamically do is tap into tension and release, and then calibrate our understanding of how much tension, how much release. I was talking to Dave. I have a statement that I make all the time to my students or in workshops that I've done, and that is that it is counterintuitive for drummers to let go. Drummers want to hold on and play, and that is a condition of you're just trying to facilitate what you hear. So a lot of times, because you're trying to play something that you hear, you're not really thinking about the facility, and you're just playing and working it out, and all of a sudden you realize you've built an approach, again, that may not have a lot of flexibility. So my game is to add the flexibility and the nuance to that. And if we think about the relationship of us and the drum set is a multi-surfaced instrument, thereby it is not so productive to only play in German and move like this, or play ride cymbal stuff only like this. I can talk about dialect. If you play open eighth notes, that would give you a more bouncy approach to your eighth note playing, which would sort of tap into the dialect of early R&B roots music. And that's related to jazz, where you'd be playing that swing feel. So anyway, back to the top. I would squeeze, hold it there so you feel the tension, and release. Now, one business that we want to really watch is that the stick sits in the last joint of the index finger, so that that fulcrum point is the same that I would do in German. I demonstrated this for Dave earlier, and so this is a great visual presentation just to show you the continuity of the approach. But here's what I'll call a German kick-up. Some people would call it maybe a free stroke, but the free stroke would actually, you'd pull your wrist back. This is really for free. This is about a pivot. So now I'm here. Now watch, I'm just going to throw my elbow out and drop. Now I'm in French grip. Now I'm going to do what I call a French grip pickup, and I'm going to lead with my elbow and drop back into German. So you basically have everything set up so that you can move in a harmonious way around the drum set.
Can you do that one more time? Maybe go to the overhead shot there?
Sure,
That'd be great.
So here's my thrust, and watch, this is, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment, about the molar thing, but I have a ball and socket here, a hinge and a hinge. Watch how I just easily wind up and strike, drop my elbow out, my rotation of my forearm is supportive of releasing the stick, and then I grab it and drop, and there I am back in German grip. So, we use both. Essentially, and then you've got the hybrid sort of in between, which Dom Famularo has dubbed the American grip, which is a great name, but because if you're going to label stuff, you want to have some points of reference. If you don't have reference points, it's hard to have a real intricate and intimate conversation about these things. So I'm all about tagging and giving some names so that when I'm speaking about this to my students, that we're really getting to the heart of the matter. I'm looking for, in my teaching, I'm looking for bullseyes. So, if I have to video a portion of the lesson so the guy goes home and he doesn't forget it a week later, I give him that video. It could be like a 59-second video. But it encapsulates the whole essence of what we're trying to get out of some of the things that I do. And step by step, I work and reshape how the hand and the body move. If you watch some guys, there's some awkward movement in their playing. It's no fault of their own, and it's not anything to go, oh, you can't do that, because I'll say this. You can do whatever you want as long as it gets it out and it doesn't corrupt certain things. So, for example, I'll go back again to the French grip. If I do this squeeze, look at my back three fingers. They are supportive of the stick in this position. They're not going to cradle the stick, because if I cradle, I have now negated the element of balance over my index finger that I'm trying to extract. So I want to open them up, and that also opens them up later on for single strokes. So what we want to do is say, well, geez, what if I'm playing on the cymbal and I'm cradling the stick? No problem, as long as you can go back to your home base. These fundamentals are forever. They push you forward. I've had so many students through the years, and like you mentioned a few, like Mark Schulman and Daniel Glass. Those guys study with me more comprehensively. But I have a lot of guys that are lesser known. Like there's a couple of guys in LA that, maybe a few LA guys would know, Michael Lindsay, Jake Jameson. I have to think because I always forget. It's not like I keep the names all in my back pocket all the time. But they know, they study with me for periods of 4 to 5 years to really get into the nuance, and it dramatically enhanced their playing. They were great players already. Don't get me, don't misunderstand me, that the facility is to open up channels so you can reach further in your playing. So it's for everybody. And if you're a young guy and you're kind of like, yeah, I don't like technique, I'm fine. You may be fine now, but youthful exuberance can carry you a certain distance, and then you get a little older and you realize, gee, man, my elbow hurts, or I'm doing something funny that's not really getting it out.
Yeah, and we've seen that even with some of the greats. They're experiencing stuff like that happening now.
Right.
Yeah.
We were talking about, like, so for example, here's a very simple visual that I can present in the traditional grip. If you watch Dave Weckl in the very early stages of like the 80s into the early 90s, his approach in traditional grip was held on the back end of the stick. Now watch, if I let go of the stick, watch what happens. Nothing. Okay, if I go to the balance point of the stick, I get bounces. I can use that to my advantage. You can always learn to control and let go and still control where you want to take that. It takes a little more time, but at the end of the day, if you look at Buddy Rich, that's what it was all about. The inside the hand nuance and balance of what he was doing to get those things out. So one more thing I'll address in the French grip is that when I want to do what I call just the French grip strike, so there's another little exercise to set this up, but I'll just fast forward. I want to follow through like a whip. So from my elbow, that's one hinge. The pivot point of my index finger and thumb is a secondary pivot, and I want the stick to just naturally, from the swing of my forearm coming up, follow through and then strike. Now when I strike, I've impacted it, I've got it solid in the hand. Again, I want to go for that tension and address that. So similar to, if there's any, or similar to a percussionist when he does a conga slap, the slap tone, you really want to grab that nice and firm. You want to dig in and pop it into the head. It's not an open tone, it's grab it. So in a similar sense, there we go, there's our strike. Now, do we always use that? No. Because what I do is pick up different pieces and assemble them and say we have what we call the inner logic of movement. Knowing when to add a certain amount of anatomy and knowing when to let it go. So like I said before, calibrating your tension and your release to some point. When you play slower, you want to have more of a follow through of your anatomy. I don't want to let go. If it's too loosey-goosey, that's not going to be helpful to tone and density of stroke. So loose is good, but not too loose. We want to calibrate that. But staying loose and in form is excellent for your body posture. I'm all about body posture, weight distribution, and all that stuff. And you've got inside a few different parameters of exercises. For example, if I play jazz time and I'm using my French grip, at this tempo, I really can feel the stick swing like a pendulum. Now this upstroke right here is not just an arbitrary move. It's the middle beat of triplet 1 and 3. So building upon that, I can really feel the space of what I'm playing. Now some guys will go like, space, what are you talking about? In essence, it's not the note you play, it's the space around it. It's the choreographing and the move that really helps to enunciate and bring the depth to that note. And when you can slow things down and see the value of the space and get this elastic web feel inside what you're doing, you have a different feel and a different mind's eye to relating to what you're doing. When you play faster, that space value is still big. Remember Dr. Einstein, man, right? Time and space are relative. Yeah. So get into the understanding of that. When you play faster, you'll see relatively the space very clearly at faster tempos. If you're playing, here's an 8-stroke roll. When I'm playing that, I feel all the nuance in the space of that. So it's not just fast for fast. You got to also facilitate what you want to play rhythmically and melodically to what you're doing. So back to this. This is a really great way to experience, oh, I have a fluidity to my time. What I would do with that is put it on the ride cymbal and conduct just very, what I call calisthenics, building up an understanding of playing a left hand comping with not disrupting that ride cymbal one iota, making it real solid so it has its own independent orbit and can never be knocked off its foundation. Does that mean I can't get tight and do things when I'm playing a jazz-related thing? No, you can break the rules, but you're trying to establish a certain amount of independence of movement that will enhance what you naturally do. So basically what we're trying to do is up your game, not change necessarily and go, now you have to play like this. For the tasks, for the exercises, be humble to them. Make space and time to conduct yourself in a very calm, clear, orchestrated way. it will bring so much results. You know, we all want to just play those grooves and we get sucker punched and I just want to play, I want to play, I want to play. That doesn't really necessarily bring you forward all the time. Playing and musicianship is certainly something that we have to sit with, but technique, oh man, that's a whole other game. So let's bridge now. Let's go a little bit to like the German grip and things that we would have sensibilities from German that would work to our advantage. So the one thing that comes to mind in German is that you have a couple of things. You have the ability to do the molar strike. Now, I've seen many exposés on molar. I hung closely with Jimmy Chapin. I hung very closely with Freddie. I used to kind of sometimes, almost like a kid, get them to have a discussion and get into a little bit of an argument. So I'd say, hey, Jimmy, what about this in front of Freddie? And Freddie would go, no, that's not right. And they'd get into this little bitching match for a second. But I did it because I was just trying to, like, you know, get into the nuance of what Jimmy was presenting and then the Freddie adaptation. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Jimmy Chapin was Freddie Gruber's teacher many years ago. A long weekend Freddie spent with him. So he got the nuance of molar from Jimmy, but he modified it, and he never really called it molar. He called it the whip-snap motion. So, but anyway, when you do that, I've seen all these guys doing this. I've talked extensively with a few guys, and one in particular, Don Lombardi, and we both surmised that that's when you have the drum at a parade angle and you're coming out, maybe you're doing something like that. But for realistic playing of molar, here it is, man. You got a ball and socket, you got a hinge, you got a hinge. Now what we need is the inner structure of the hand to support the pop of the stick tip off the pad. That's the nuance that we really want to get to. But the German is going to be most effective. However, going back, sneaking into French, I have what I call the French molar, taking the locomotive move. I can't talk and play at the same time. Hold on. I'm going to play 16th notes, and I'm going to use that little whipping motion and watch the butt end of my stick, how it walks up to that fourth note. And it looks like my fingers are kind of playing the stick. They're just subservient. They're connected to the stick. So if I do that, look at how my fingers, like a shock absorber, move with the stick. That's loose. That's being in simpatico with what the stick is doing. So, German setups. Let's talk a few little nuances. A couple things to think about. If I compartmentalize my hand in German, I have different components. I have these guys, ring and pinky finger, as one sort of housing, again, going back to Tony Williams. I have also the middle finger, of course, which is a great pivot point, and thumb and index finger. And if I go again from my French grip to my German, there's a continuity. I'm in the last joint of the index finger, my thumb's flat, and all that good stuff. That also sets up the hand to have the acoustic shell, so you get a good resonance. Because your tonal quality is built on how you strike the instrument. So that means the stick has a certain amount of resonant factor by the virtue of the wood or the size of the wood. Your bone density plays into account for that thing, and how you strike the instrument. Remember, this is percussion. This is what Freddie would all say. Bruce, percussion. Strike off. If you ever saw a mallet guy, they don't take the mallet and jam it into the rosewood bars. It's, you know, strike off. Or timpani. Timpani is all about coming off because the kettle drum is quite sensitive. The head's thin, and if you hit into it, you're just going to destroy the tone. So, and we are, you know, sometimes we overlook tone. Tone is a big deal, man. There's some great drummers who had just amazing sensibilities, and guys now, you know, there's all sorts of guys that think more about that. But so, German, here's an exercise that I would do to set up the balance of the stick. Now, we talked about the balance on the index finger in the French grip. For German, I'm going to go over the middle finger. So if the flag on my Vic First stick is roughly the balance point of the stick, which it is, like roughly just around the flag or just a little bit between the H, that same would hold true for the middle finger. Now, the funny thing about the middle finger is that we want to really bring about a sense of balance that is really finely tuned for all those nuances. Here's system, or the push-pull, guys call it, Freddie called it the system. But if I do something like a 4-stroke rough paradiddle, which is not so easy, but to get those 4 strokes to really come into the hand, that's all inside the hand stuff. So that requires that we really take consideration to how we set up the hand to get it to move good. And again, I know I can hear guys saying like, yeah, but that's too much detail. Listen, even in rock and roll, there's cool details. If you know who Jim Keltner is, if you know Steve Gadd, he's a multi-dimensional guy, but he plays some cool nuanced stuff in rock and roll settings. There's so much room to be creative. So if you're a rock guy and you're just like, yeah, I'm a meat and potatoes guy, that's cool too. I got to tell you, if I do a rock and roll gig, I do nothing choppy. I have no chops when it comes to that. I'm just playing like, in essence, if it's, whatever the tune is, if it's an AC/DC tune that I'm covering or whatever it is, I try to bring forward the element of what those guys did. And there we go into another example of a different approach technique-wise, and that's using your body weight. And you can do that with your hands because you're letting things go and dropping your arm weight and falling with the weight of the stick. Then there's other kinds of time where you could play a little bit more of the choreographed move, which allows for you to think through a little bit more about how do I make this thing dance, without weight. Yeah. So German, watch this. I squeeze. Now there's a couple of nuances here, and it's going to be hard to get it all in one quick, short burst of a lesson, but check it out. My thumb and index finger loose, hanging. My three fingers are supporting the stick as the palm is down, and I'm going to squeeze the stick into my palm, flat-fingered, not cradling, not pressing my fingertips into the palm, but flat-fingered. And then I'm going to release and balance over the fingerprint. Don't let your hand drop and cradle, because that's not really getting the essence of the balance. So we squeeze and you release. And all that does is recalibrate how you feel the stick in your hand. If you're doing molar, and then you can take a myriad of stick control exercises and use them, as I call it, calisthenics, to support the growth and the push forward of that kind of stuff.
What about the exercises that we have here? Do those help with these kind of...
Great. Yeah. So let's move on and let's pick up. Actually, let's take out file number 1, the first exercise on the ups and downs page.
All right.
And so what I did is I just basically took out a double paradiddle in eighth note triplets to basically speak about the hand movement. Now here I've got accents on all 4 beats. So the accent on the 2 and 4 is at first maybe a little challenging to get what we want out of it, but let me demonstrate. So I'm going to play triplets. I've got down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So on my upstroke, what I can do is get a nice fat upstroke where I'm not throwing the stick in, I'm not doing anything that's against the movement. I'm basically just snapping it as I come up, which my wrist would fall anyway as I play the upstroke. So I'll demonstrate it in just pure eighth notes. Down, up, down, up, down, up. And I get a nice, clear, defined, fat eighth note on the up and down. So in the double paradiddle, I can work on that to get down, up, 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 down. And of course, I can't say it that fast, but I'm very much about giving verbal calls, again, to center your attention on what it is you're doing so that you're very clear about that. And it's a challenge. It would be the challenge of like what Gary Chester put in The New Breed, to sing all the patterns.
Yeah.
This is to just document what you're doing in regards to the choreographing of your movement, but that opens up so much fluidity to what you want to do. Now, if we I'm going to go down, let's pull up PDF 2, or file number 2. And now it's the same exercise, but it's in eighth notes. And look at it, you still have everything orchestrated in the same way. We see 6 eighth notes, 6 eighth notes, 12 eighth notes. Well, there was 12 eighth note triplets in one bar. But the feel of this is a little different, because if I'm playing it in eighth notes, I can start to reframe and calibrate the swing feel of my eighth notes. So check it out. I'll play it in 3/4 time. 1, 2, 3. So now I have this tap dance effect. And of course, if you go back and listen to early guys like Chick Webb, Papa Joe Jones, Buddy, Gene Krupa, there was this very close relationship to what tap dancers were doing, in that phrasing was just the fabric of what they did. And so for younger guys, I think it's really an advantage to learn how to swing. Not that you have to go back and say, I'm going to be a jazz guy now. But think about Rudy rock and roll drummers that we all dig. Bonham, Mitch Mitchell. They all swung. John Densmore. And so you can add some more subtle nuance to your playing. And if you get a little deeper, you can listen to more guys that had that, like Levon Helm from the band. You know, a lot of nuance in his playing and a nice feel. You get a little bit more forward. You got Richie Hayward from Little Feat. Now you got Stanton Moore, who's a real funky dude. You know, and he's got that swing feel, but he comes from New Orleans, so he eats, sleeps, and drinks it. But the point is that we can understand how to get that a little clearer into our playing if we have a technical approach, and then a calisthenic that can approach the phrasing and the nuance of those eighth notes. So I'm going to go one more. Let me see. Let me take. Let's go to number 12.
All right, we'll throw up number 12.
Yeah, number 12 is a good one because, again, it has the same 2 double paradiddles in eighth notes. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and then 3 and Lee, 4 and Lee, and that's a double paradiddle. So I have double paradiddle, double paradiddle, double paradiddle in a 2-bar phrase. So I've got all that nice up and down stroke. Now on beat 4, we're going to have an upstroke even though we're not playing an accent. So there is going to be the choreographed move. We want to develop touch. So just because we're coming up, we don't always have to accent it. And just because we're coming down doesn't mean that gravity has to sucker punch us into playing a big note.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you got a nice exercise that can calibrate your swing feel of your eighth notes, orchestrate some movement, and give you a little bit more of some tangible, identifiable things to work towards to enhance your feel. There's a section at the end of the Buddy Rich book that is called Advanced Rhythmic Studies. When I go through that with my students, I reframe it and let's call it just tap dance vignettes.
Okay.
Because they're little vignettes. These are sort of extracted from some of those at the back of the book because they really allow you just to sit with a 2-bar phrase and obsess a little bit with the nuance of your 8th note playing or your 16th note playing and stuff like that. I've framed some of the stickings to make it more user-friendly. For example, like pull up number 11, guys.
Comes number 11?
Number 11. So number 11 is essentially the same one that we just did, except on the 3 and 4 of the second bar, we have 16th notes. You could call it a paradiddle, diddle, diddle, or an 8-stroke roll. I like it because it really has nice flow to it. But so again, now with our hi-hat on 2 and 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you got a nice, cool 2-bar phrase that has some swing to it. And nothing comes from doing nothing. Here's what I mean by that. If you're not listening to the style of music that you're trying to do, in other words, let's say, I'm going to get a jazz book. I'm just going to read like out of Jimmy Chapin book or Chuck Flores or whatever jazz patterns there would be. That's not learning the essence of the music. And the same with rock. If you're a rock guy, I have a student who's a newer guy, and his background was jazz, totally. And he's a little bit younger. I think he's, in his mid to late 40s or so. Yeah. But he had to learn how to play rock and roll. He was actually with the band Foreigner for a little bit. Oh, wow. And now he plays with Roger Hodgson. Brian Head, how you doing, Brian? Let's say hi to Brian. But he said, I had to learn how to play rock and roll because I didn't have those sensibilities. Yeah. So it's always, contingent upon where you come from.
Makes sense, man.
Yeah.
So these exercises, you guys could take, there's a lot more on the page, but you could take that same approach and go through those because they will develop that facility like you're talking about.
Sure.
Now, it's 4:40, so we got about 20 minutes left. So we have a bit of time here, but maybe just kind of wrap up, give, I guess, the students watching something to kind of take away, practice, and apply to their own technique. Because I think for me, when I was learning, I always, and this is why I like the title, The Truth About Hand Technique, because I always thought that there's one way to do it. I've always seen, I watched one person teach me, and then I would would always feel bad if I'm going to French grip when I go to the ride cymbal and stuff, because I just didn't know. I mean, you read all these books and you see one drummer do it one way, another drummer do it the other way. So I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe just wrap it up and show us what the best approach would be or how to think about hand technique.
Okay, well, let me do this. So here's a pretty good visual of just thinking about, if I'm moving from tom to tom, I'm going to just play like just simple triplets for right now. And I'll play the downbeats on the toms. And I'll just stay in German. And let's just look at my move. How do I look uncomfortable? Well, I feel uncomfortable moving this way because I'd rather arc over and just fall out into a French grip. So building the understanding of that arc, tying the two together so that sitting in a French grip. So what can you take away from this? Well, you could work on just playing a simple triplet and getting comfortable with the arc. Now, Freddie was always into the element of movement and the arc. Again, going back to choreographing things. So if we take it off the pad, we're just expanding our range now to the drum set. So for example, if I take those triplets, I could play them French grip, which would be great too, because I do that with my students to really nail them. Upstroke and the downstroke and get into this orbit of movement. Of course, as you get faster, it becomes more lateral as opposed to elliptical. But so you can take something and just simply move it around and play triplets and go, okay, French grip or hybrid. So I'm going to go French, German, and then French. So here. Do the same thing with a single paradiddle. 1, 2, 3. Just a quick observation. Notice when I'm striking the cymbal, I come to the tip. That's a good practice to do instead of just always smashing and crashing to bring your touch up. So you really feel like you can get to the tip of the stick as well.
Gotcha.
You know, crashing is like the easier. That's like the easy way out.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
So another thing that I would think about is like for a rock pattern, I'll just go back to French grip for like just simple eighth notes. Now in left hand, I'm going to stay German. That's the better way to get a backbeat because I can use all my molar. So here we go. Just notice when I played the 16th note triplets, I did my molar German approach. So in other words, I have the flexibility. What I like to say is you can build up a technical approach that has elasticity and flexibility, which brings strength and confidence to what you want to do. Another thing you can work on is that French grip approach here for French molar, playing 16th notes and just so there's a few things. Playing some jazz time. I'll just quickly share with you. If I'm doing French grip at this tempo and then I kind of morph up and speed up a little bit, I'm going to do a hybrid whereby I'm going to start to engage a little bit more in my wrist, that inner logic of movement. So I'll play it a little bit quicker. That feels a whole lot better than me trying to go. You could see the tension in my arm.
Yeah.
I could feel it.
Yeah, you can hear it too. You can hear the difference.
Yeah. It sounds more strained.
Yeah. Very cool. Anything else to add before we go into the next portion? Because I want to get you to play another song.
Yeah.
And I know we have a lot of questions here. Now, just letting everyone know we won't be able to get to all the questions today because time is of the essence. But tomorrow we are doing a full Q&A, a full hour-long Q&A with Bruce. So any questions that we miss, we will get to those there. And anyone who's watching this and wants to ask Bruce any more questions, feel free to join us tomorrow.
Do you have some questions already lined up? Or?
I sure do.
Okay, let's go there.
Want to do this? Let's get you to play first. I want you to play for us
Sure,
first, and then
sure.
we'll get to the questions.
Okay.
This is another track that you have from, again, David Becker, Tribune. And this one's called Blues for Albie.
Yep, this is a blues tune that my brother wrote for a big bearded guy that was in a band called Supercharge. He's still around. They were a band that was produced by Mutt Lange way back in the late 70s.
Crazy.
Yeah, and they were supposed to go and open up for Queen on a bunch of dates, and something happened with their record company, and it was all for naught. But they still exist in a small form and tour Germany and Austria still.
That's great.
Yeah, my brother played with him for a minute, but he said he was a funny guy, engaging, so this is the Blues for Albie.
Nicely played. Nice phrasing on those
Thank you.
fills, man.
Thank you, man.
That's great. Some trading going on there.
Yeah, just trying to play the tune.
Yeah, you did a great job. We got some questions for you.
Groovy.
This first one's from Gil, or Jill Flores, one of our members says, "Hey Bruce, hey Dave, this lesson on the truth of hand technique. What are some lies that you would like to dispel that you've heard, or some probably
well lies? I would say like
misconceptions?
Certain things about the molar move and stuff like that, the setup of that. I think that there's some misunderstandings, etc., about how that works. Here's a byproduct. If I'm doing molar with a real easy sense, watch the butt end of my stick. It's calibrated to each space to that fourth note. Now, I'm not watching for that. That's just the fact of when I'm doing it right and real easy. If you see a guy who's throwing it down and then maybe getting up on the fourth note or getting way up to the tip, certain things like that. It's very nuanced about what that is. But I never say that there's anything that's necessarily wrong. There's just things that are right-er.
And I think that's the biggest truth that there is. There's many ways to skin a cat.
Exactly.
And as long as you have some main fundamentals, like a nice loose grip, and like I said, you're able to facilitate what you want to play. A couple other questions for you. Here's one from Sean Yan. He says, "What suggestions would you have on hand technique on the ride cymbal in a jazz scenario?"
Well, again, if it's like a medium tempo, so, verging upon up to 140 beats per minute from around 85-ish, 90-ish if you're playing like a slow thing, I'd stay in French grip. Now, the French grip, mind you, that's a nice way to swing, but you don't always have to play it open. You can phrase those things where you have like a dotted 8th, 16th phrasing, or, almost like even a skip beat closer. Like I remember Peter Erskine talking about that you could almost feel like it's a quintuplet when it's like that. So the phrasing would be. Now, clearly when I'm doing that, there's more tension. But here's the key phrase. You can always add the tension. If you don't have the facility to let it go, you're going to be in trouble. So in other words, you could walk up to somebody and say, "Hey man, loosen up. And they may accept that notion clearly. But physically, you have to make the reflexive changes to really build it into a place where you're really letting go. It's not that you just yell at somebody or go like, "Hey, loosen up," and you got a magic like, "Oh, I'm loose."
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I wish it was that easy.
Yeah. But just to finish up, you go a little faster. You want to morph into a little bit more of the German so you can use your wrist to give you a little bit of that whipping motion or the molar-esque thing too. So that gives you like, ooh, that kind of approach. You're slower, and as you speed up, you morph into that.
Yeah. Makes sense. Great answer. Les, a question from Kirk in the chat. He says, "My sticks don't bounce back perfectly. They pull right or left. Is that correctable?" Thanks for your time.
Absolutely. There's a little exercise that I do for French grip that takes a little time, but everybody spends, I use it as like a continuing warm-up. Freddie would have little exercises that he would say, "This is every week, man. Don't stop," And so that is just the down and upstroke in French, because when you come up, especially in the left hand may not have the placement of the right hand. And remember, in the development of your right and left hand, your left hand has a more subservient, different role. It's the color hand. So to try to make your hands perfectly symmetric is not necessarily the game. Although we try to pursue that in our practice, but for playing purposes, you're right-handed. And your right hand's going to have much more of that timekeeping and have some of those sensibilities of movement and calibrating the movement of the stick. But let your right hand teach your left hand. Get inside every nuance of what your right hand is doing when it's doing it right. And feel, okay, bring that over to the left hand. I can tell you from my teaching, if I have somebody do something in their right hand and it's at a point where they're getting it done properly, and I go, "Okay, let's play left-handed." Usually, if the left hand's a little bit sappy, the first 2 or maybe 3 tries will be really good, and then it'll fall back into sappiness because your right hand is sort of triggered like, "Oh, that's the idea."
Yeah.
So,
I used to struggle with that a lot, so it's definitely correctable. It just takes some time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's a good question from Matt O. Asks, is the fulcrum point at the equally weighted middle of the sticks, as when you balance it on one finger, or is it higher on the stick?
No, the balance point of the stick, meaning more appropriately, how much bounce are you getting out of it? So if I'm housing the stick again around the flag to the H of the Vic Firth logo, and I let it fall out, I get all those bounces. So if I drop back like just a little bit, so I'm now like over this logo of ST10 Swinger, watch the bounces. It's more weighted. Watch. So I want that feel. Now again, for rock and roll, if I'm tired and I'm doing a club gig and I just want to feel weight, I will drop back. So there again, once you know all the rules and understand the dynamic of those different positionings and recalibrating of things, you can always break them. That's why I say there's no necessarily a right way. There's just better ways to do things. And you can always go into that for vibe or nuance or attitude. It's like knowing when to wear a nice suit and tie or knowing when to show up in like a t-shirt and jeans.
Yeah, yeah. Todd Tech Hotmail says, Bruce, as you aged, did you start noticing any extra tension or stiffness? And if so, did you perform any type of yoga or special dexterity classes?
Well,
or exercises, sorry.
No, but I've been a practicer of yoga for many years. Now in this last, I got to be honest, in the last year or so, my practice has been somewhat knocked off its foundation because I have two little ones. I have a 3-year-old daughter and I have about a 4-month-old son. And I am what you call the twilight dad. Never was a dad before. So the yoga practice and the regularity of that has been a little bit knocked off. But there's a lot of commonalities between yoga and understanding the dynamic of a stretch and the tension in that stretch and the posture of that and the breath that you can put into how you maneuver your hands and stuff like that. But as far as tension for me, no, I'm getting older and I feel better about my playing and my looseness, provided that I stay on the game of practice.
Yeah.
Which I'm very fortunate that I have the time to do that, but I'm always in touch with this conversation because I'm teaching a lot of guys.
Totally.
So it's a wonderful position to be in.
Very cool. Last question before we wrap up, and we'll go with, oh man, there's so many. Like I said, guys, all these questions will be answered tomorrow. Where did it go here? All right, here we go. We'll do this one. Bonesy asks, would you play new country tunes with the same approach as rock music? I have technique, but I feel I can't use it in these styles sometimes.
Yes, that's a great question. And here's what I would say, that through the years of me playing a lot of cover gigs, because you know, cover gigs, they give you a little bit of a bullseye. I call, when you do like classic rock or whatever, it's like classical music. There's a written form to that, and there's subtle interpretation. And through your study of whether it's traditional country or more modern country or rock or pop or whatever it is, you have resources to listen to it, to dig in and get the inflection or the dialect out of it that you're looking. Now, that being said, what I found through my approach is that I was able to extract nuance from different guys that I liked. And not that you're technically reproducing what they're doing. That's really not the issue. You're trying to find your voice within that. So it's basically like you find, like, how do you get that feel? Well, that guy did it kind of like this. So in your facility, as you build it, how are you going to get that to represent what it is you hear? And again, your hearing, your musical head, is going to operate. Now, when you have more nuance and subtlety in your playing, you might find those dialects a little easier. Mm-hmm. I've played a lot of different kinds of rock and stuff like that, and I have, you know, a huge library of tunes in my head from playing all that stuff, which has been, you know, very fortunate. And it's given me, you know, like avenues of stealing from this guy and stealing a little bit from this guy, and just, you know, what my phrase is, you know, you imitate, assimilate, and innovate. We're always ripping off our forefathers, you know, and we stand, you know, on the shoulders of those who precede us. But technically, you can find nuance out of what I'm doing. I can show, you know, if we had a real intimate, detailed conversation, I could give you extracts. Now, my results may be different from his results. You know, his results could be a little more this and mine are this, but they come from that same source of building up the loose approach and stuff like that. And again, like I said, when you're loose, you can always add tension. You just want to be able to go home to, and let it go.
Yeah. Great lesson, man.
Thank you, Dave.
Tons of great information. You guys are going to have to watch this more than once just to get everything. And when we were talking before, I was writing notes and I couldn't write fast enough as he was talking because every sentence meant so much. And that's, I guess, just the years of experience and the wisdom that you have coming through. But you can really notice it. So watch this lesson more than once, I beg you. And again, I apologize for not getting to all the questions. Obviously, the time has gotten away from us, but we will do a whole Q&A. And if you guys are watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the archives, so you can go check it out because there's a lot of great technique questions. For those of you who are watching on YouTube as well, we have a giveaway. We're going to be giving away Bruce's book, which is called Puzzles, Rhymes, and Riddles. And we are also going to be giving away, along with it, his DVD called Concepts and Philosophies. All you need to do is write a comment below this video saying what you liked about it, and within 30 days of us releasing it, we're going to choose 5 winners, and we will ship you that free of charge. And again, guys, thank Bruce for coming out.
Thank you.
Go and follow him on brucebecker.com or Bruce Becker Drums on Facebook. If you like what we do here, sign up for Drumeo Edge, where we do a new lesson every day. And we're also doing a course specifically on technique, which is going to go much more in depth, a lot shorter, to the point, and it's going to be a great course to release. Do you have anything to add before we wrap things up?
No, I just want to thank you guys and thank all the people in Drumeo. And you guys got a great scene up here and doing a great service to the drum community. And I'm just happy to be up here and be able to raise my hand and contribute to the conversation.
That's what it's all about, man. Yeah. You're always welcome here, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Do you want to play us out with something?
Sure. Just maybe kind of make a little bit of a groove.
So. Yeah, make some groove up.